All right, I'm gonna hit record now. Yeah?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, go ahead.
We're still getting set up here. Hey, this is Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg, Texas. What's happening, everybody? It's me and my pal, Emily Moyer, and we're doing a Matrix MASH live as we speak today on Friday the first day of March. What's going on, Emily?
Hey, nice to be back. I think this is episode 7 in our first foray into the live edition of this. So I'm excited about that. And there is so much stuff going on, and thank goodness for you. Otherwise I would have trouble keeping up with it all.
There's not a day that goes by now where we're not sorting through something that is either bizarre, startling, interesting, enlightening, sickening. I mean, we're really running the gamut now from things like, oh yeah, sure, let's peddle live birth, let's peddle late-term abortions. Let's get this passed, right? I mean, everything from like that grotesquerie to, seemingly bizarre stuff like the Bob Kraft thing, which we're going to go over today, and the reunion. They're back. Alex Jones and Joe Rogan reunited. And it feels so good. The bromance is back on again. And it's
a threesome now too with Eddie Bravo. So
yeah, three's company, right? So we're going to go over some of that today. We're going to get into some of the Bob Kraft stuff, maybe a little Jussie Smollett, and we'll see where this thing takes us.
Yeah.
But the and by the way, it looks like Pakistan and India might be on the verge of igniting World War III, but that's a whole other subject for another show at another time.
Yeah.
So anyway, how are you, Emily?
I'm doing great. Just things have been very busy and crazy, but mostly very good for me. And been kind of whipping off a lot of shows the last couple of weeks. Some of them aren't out yet, but so I've been busy with that, been traveling a bit, and just starting to have more and more nutritional consultations too. So that's awesome. Starting to bring more of my energy healing skills into that as well. That's cool. That's fun. And yeah, just living the dream,
Yeah.
You have to be asleep to believe it.
So just to let people know, I'm doing the Friday FARcast and the Sunday night show for the time being live on YouTube, and the Monday through Thursday, the 15 Minutes of Flame, that's going to be on the 15 Minutes of Flame website. And ultimately, there'll be a migration of everything, but I need to keep one foot in one world for a little while so that we can begin to, have this process take place. So I just want to be clear, let everybody know that this will happen here on Friday, and then Sunday night, it'll be the Astro live stream. Okay, now we can start. Okay.
Yeah, and also you can always find Matrix MASH on our YouTube channel, Randy and I's YouTube channel, Off Planet Media, where you can also find my main podcast, Off Planet Radio. And so yeah, you can find it on Robert's channel or on my channel, or our channel, Randy and my channel. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to clarify that, because there are some people say, oh, you're back, and there's a reason why I'm here, because it's just another process involved. Anyway, let's get going. Let's jump into the Joe and Alex thing. Now, you texted me right when it started to happen.
Yeah.
And
I had no idea what was happening. Like I just came out of, whatever my appointment was, whatever I guess I was at home, I was doing some studying, and I took a break, and I clicked on YouTube, and it was up in my feed, and I was like, okay, wow, that's surprising. I guess I didn't, in hindsight, we should have seen that coming, but I wasn't expecting that. And so it was already a little bit in, and I was busy. So I just got to listen to a little bit here and there. And then I listened to some of the clips later. And yesterday I tried to start watching it from the beginning, but about 40 or 45 minutes in, I got to the space where I'm like, this is time I will never get back. I don't know if I can listen to 4 hours and 40 minutes of this. But it was, all the things that I saw were quite the display. And there's a lot going on here to discuss. It's sort of the end of things, the beginning of things, and, really a huge psychological operation both on the public who follow these people, but also on the three of them themselves. So
yeah, so I want to bring up a picture here.
Yeah,
I think this is the aftermath of Joe and Alex. Let me see if I can find the right second. Okay, so this is the aftermath of Joe and Alex, and this is the, you know, they're bathing in the glow, right? There they are.
Yeah.
Alex has his NASA shirt on.
Right.
So
what is that behind Joe?
Good question.
What kind of entity is that? Look at that little.
Yeah, it looks like the Grim Reaper. It looks like some sort of like death symbol going on. But they're just you know, happy as pigs and shit there, you know.
Joe looks like has like the Jester or the Joker look going on in his face big time there.
He's always got that going on.
Yeah.
It's like Rogan's kind of, you know, in on a joke most of the time. Like I think he knows what's going on to some extent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So first thing that really struck me about this was that typically this is what guys kind of do. Like they don't carry beefs for a long time. You know, they're kind of like dogs in parks, at dog parks. Yeah. You know, you see dogs, you know, they'll tumble and then they're done. And then they've moved on. And
then they're humping each other 7 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. I mean, they're kind of like, you know, in the best sense of the concept, two dogs in a dog park. And this is what guys are like sometimes. So they buried the grudge, which I think was, on the surface, it seemed to be a pretty deep grudge, because Alex Jones, you know, short of wishing, you know, a long and painful death to Joe Rogan, then burning in hell. I mean, he was kind of getting there, right? I mean, on some of his podcasts, some of his streams.
So I don't listen to Alex Jones anymore. You know, I haven't for many, many years, but his clips aren't on YouTube anymore, so I don't even see the highlights. So yeah, I think that's when I'm talking about, that this is also an operation being run on the two of them. I think for them on the inside, on a certain level, the tiff was genuine, but for whoever's pulling both of their strings, whoever is running Operation Sacred Cow, which we'll get to in a little bit, you know, is really yanking on both of them, right? This is a complete marionette show on a certain level, and the outbursts from Alex are part of that.
Yeah, certainly. And to set the stage astrologically, remember, Joe Rogan and Alex Jones are born exactly in opposite signs, right? So Joe is born on, I believe it's August 11th, and then Jones is February 11th. So they're the exact opposites, Leo and Aquarius. And when you and I were talking about this last year, when all this was going down, I mean, you could see this astrologically, where the South Node was hitting Jones's sun, and the True Node was hitting Rogan's sun, and they were headed in different directions. Joe was ascending, Alex was descending. And the key thing around Alex's descent was Sandy Hook. I mean, that really, amongst other things, but Sandy Hook was a big deal. And they got into that early on, and then YouTube censored that first 40 minutes. So it's very hard to find the first 40 minutes of that show.
I seem to have it, but I heard that from you, and then I was listening to Josh Reeves a little bit last night, and he said that seemed to happen, and then it seemed to be back. Like he said, it was weird. It was like that, and then it was back, the full version. So I don't know what happened with that, but yeah, I mean that is it is interesting. So Joe was ascending, Alex was descending, and now they both seem to have come to some sort of interesting center or some sort of like nucleus of this kind of thing. And there's some interesting activity going on here that, as you and I discussed yesterday, and Robert and I have lots of chats and texts, that is sort of the end of something and maybe the beginning of something else.
Yeah. But why don't we go back, and maybe you can summarize what he was talking about with Sandy Hook and Alex's his deniability around it. And I remember when Sandy Hook happened, and Alex was basically saying it was a hoax, but that's all the story.
Yeah. So, this is the big, I think there was a couple of things that were going on here. I think the important part of this podcast was the main thing was to rehabilitate Joe Rogan's reputation amongst his longtime fans who have first appreciated him because of his questioning of government and his fondness for conspiracies and whatnot. And he really he'd been falling with this for a long time, but the Jack Dorsey interview made it super obvious, and people who had been asleep on him before were suddenly awake. And, then he, flubbed it. There's been a couple of things lately that were really harming his reputation amongst his longtime listeners. So that was, I think, the main point of this. And then the other point of this was to get Alex Jones on a big platform, basically, to convince people that Sandy Hook is real, because Sandy Hook is the new Holocaust, right? Like Sandy Hook denial is like Holocaust. And it sounds insane to say that, but that really is what it is, that this is the kind of operations that they're into now. And so they really need people to believe that story, hook, line, and sinker. And Alex Jones, was not really saying anything that controversial about Sandy Hook. Yeah, sure. He talked about that some of this was staged and that there was crisis actors and stuff like that. But the people who actually did the really deep research and exposing on the very serious anomalies that still have not been answered to were people like Sophia Smallstorm and the group Independent Media Solidarity, YouTubers like Professor Doom, who has disappeared. These people were able to, reveal that this was a capstone exercise or a national elite level exercise and all the things that go along with that. Alex never talked about any of that or had any of those people really on his show to discuss this, right? He may have, I don't think he ever had anybody from Independent Media Solidarity on who made that great documentary about Sandy Hook, and Sophia's work on it was phenomenal. So he wasn't saying anything that controversial. And the other person who did a lot of work on this was Wolfgang Halbig. So it's interesting that Alex is the one being sued rather than these people, but these people don't have any money and they have no public name. So it's important to have him wrapped up in this. And now it's important for him to be on the record on a major platform saying that Sandy Hook is real.
That's
right. And there's part of me that feels like he may, I don't know how much dog and pony show this whole lawsuit trial thing is, if it's part of the staged event or if it's something else or whatever. But there's part of me that feels like a lawsuit may go away or really diminish if people buy this version that he has told now. And, we may even, at first I thought, well, maybe they told him he could have his public platforms back if he did this. But then I thought, no, he doesn't even want that. He likes being the martyr and they like having him be the martyr, right? That's a good.
I think he likes being the outlaw. I'm not sure he likes. Yeah. And yeah.
So there's, that stuff going on, but basically he was there and he equated the people who, think everything is fake with schizophrenics. He even said that, and sometimes he started to catch himself in the own psychosis. And so part of his, we've talked about this before about, the mocking of the public as part of these operations, but so is the humiliation of the people involved in them. And he was acting like a crazy person at some points during this podcast. Like there would be, somebody could look at that and say, this person needs to be evaluated psychologically. Right. And so it's, then equating, all of his listeners, and he's sitting there saying people who think that all the events are fake. It's okay to think some of it, to question some things. And it's every time there was something came up about questioning, they just refer to things like Operation Northwoods and the Gulf of Tonkin and whatever, right? Like they're all old stuff and things that were military operations, international military operations. Right. It's okay to question those, but any of these domestic hoaxes or plots or whatever, if you question those, you're insane. Right? Like this to me, like Alex is now going to become the poster boy for the need to have psychological evaluations done on people who think things are fake.
Well, absolutely. And right at the same time, there was this study that came out that said conspiracy theorists were more apt to commit crime. I don't know if you saw this or not, but this came out.
I think I saw like a video that mentioned that in the title. Yeah.
So it came out. So, well, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're more apt to do all these things, right? There's a whole laundry list of kind of asocial behaviors, right? And so something is shifting in a big way now towards, number one, deplatforming, censorship, and corralling people who are not going along with the program. If you don't go along with the program, then essentially you're basically asocial, misanthropic, you know, fill in the blank, and you're dangerous to society, right? So this is a new development now. And not only that, but they being banks are keeping people from getting funded.
Yeah.
If they deem that what they're doing is outside the bounds of what they consider to be best business practices.
Yeah, that's what there was that whole segment where Alex went into the discussion about how even though he has a perfect credit rating and a perfect payment record and stuff like that, he lost all of his accounts but one because they've listed him as with an H, which is hate, which is a kind of terrorism. So I think a lot of his talking about that is to get people to start censoring themselves, and you know, whenever everything he talks about, I think is, you know, in general, is to create a fear and a paranoia amongst people to get them to start, you know, managing themselves in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Create the psychological prison, right? Yeah. The prison planet, which exists inside your head, not outside of your head as much, right? So this planet is the dome on top of your body.
Well, why don't we play a clip from the show?
Let's hear it.
And let me line it up here. Let's do this, and I'm gonna have to go through the speakers here, but it should be okay. So let's do this. A little screen shareage. Pop this up. Here we go.
Scientific research, I definitely believe.
Did you ever see Trinity and Beyond? But hold on, William Shatner. I know you know.
But let's start slow, because you go over so many different things.
Hydrogen bombs trying to ignite the atmosphere in the 1960s.
Oh no,
the U.S. Air Force tried to destroy the atmosphere in 1968.
Yes, Operation Starfish Prime. They actually detonated a nuclear bomb.
Psychotic.
They detonated a nuclear bomb in the upper ionosphere.
Trying to blow up the radiation bomb.
Yes, they've done a lot of goofy shit.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's why I got mad at you, and I love you. You're a smart guy and everything. Is I know you know.
Listen, you got mad at me because we didn't communicate.
You know all this stuff. I know. You're even better at saying it, and then you sit there because you can't handle it, and you sit there and you dole it out.
It's not that I can't handle it. There's two factors. One, I don't have time. I don't have enough time to go into it as much as you do.
I got mad at you. That's it right there. Every time I bring up a fucking subject, you know all about it.
I don't know all about
this. You fucking know all about this shit.
I don't know all about
bullshit. This. You're a smart guy.
Listen,
I don't know. Joe's just dumb. Joe just is a pot. Bullshit. You know exactly what you're doing. You're a bad guy. You're trying to survive for you and your family, and you're good.
Okay, but
my family, your family, none of us are going to make it. There's a post-human era coming. The breakaway civilization. The deal's been made. It's not. Okay. It's not the third dimension. They've made freaking deals with interdimensional aliens. Okay. And notice the media never attacks you for that. That's the truth.
Maybe it's true. I do not know this.
We'll get into it.
Okay. I do not know this. It's human pig hybrids. Jamie just pulled this out. I believe it's true.
I'm worried about human pig hybrids. I'm sorry the Sandy Hill kids died. My identity is not that.
I get it.
They admit 5G and all the studies LA Times causes massive mutation and cancer.
Wait a minute.
And literally rattles your DNA apart. All of our kids are under attack.
You mean 5G?
Trump for allowing 5G to come in.
This is the new internet.
You know they want China to put in WAPO? You know 5G a major. That's the big Chinese.
You are on
5G.
fire today.
No, the big 5G.
You're on fire.
No, Joe, the 5G.
You're on fire.
Okay.
All right, so that's a clip. And even in that brief snippet, we got
There's a lot there.
There's a ton there. First of all, Jones is basically outing Rogan as knowing almost as much as he does, which I think is probably true, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So you see in that clip there, Jones going in and out of what I'd say is character and his real feelings, his, you know, like going into programming and in and out of programming, right? Where he looks like he's like, you know, doing like some sort of comedy sketch at some points and other times looks really mad. And you watch Joe Rogan when he starts to talk about Operation Starfish, and I saw this many times during it. Whenever he's describing something that is a declassified, known, confirmed operation, he stares straight ahead and starts ranting off the details about it in like an almost monotone, like can't stop him from saying it kind of fashion. That's his programming. He's programmed to spit out the approved conspiracies, and that's it. Jones is more wild and all over the place. And I'd say that Jones's programming is breaking down at a more significant level than Joe's is, right? And so you see him weaving in and out of character in a sloppier way. Joe is kind of interesting. Like he recites certain things in monotone, and then he comes back to being what seems like his organic self. There was times during the interview where it sounded to me like, looked to me from watching his facial gestures and how Alex would snap on and off, that he might've been receiving information in a wire. You mentioned that they both disappeared to go to the bathroom at the same time several times during the podcast. So it is interesting, the things that Joe knows and doesn't know, right? I'm sure that Joe knows all about all of this stuff. I think that Joe has, but watch him when he talks. It's happened several times during the podcast. Just there it did when he talks about Northwoods, Gulf of Tonkin, when he talks about the whole thing with the certain kinds of grasshoppers coming out of the certain kinds of, biological things, like when he's talking about something that he knows that is some kind of weird conspiracy or whatever, he talks about it in a very certain way. He gets this glazed over look in his eyes, almost like he's in a trance.
It's true. I've actually noticed that about him.
Yeah. He does it when he talks sometimes, when he starts to describe his DMT experiences sometimes too. He says it in the same way every time, and he gets the same look on his face. Mm-hmm. This is his programming, and Alex's is a little bit different kind. And, and then there's, the other thing that is kind of interesting with, when they brought Eddie Bravo in, right? Like Eddie has his own kind of thing that he does, and he seems to be under a little bit less control. But I actually think that like part of what they did on this thing with Eddie is for that few minutes, he was acting like he didn't believe the thing about the babies and the governor in Virginia, right? So I think they were playing with the idea of having Eddie starting to question whether conspiracies were not or true and see how people sort of responded to that or whatever, right? And then, he said, oh, he's bullshitting you, Alex. But Eddie is an important part of this, right? Like Eddie has made a splash onto this scene where he's been interviewed like on Tinfoil Hat podcast and on Mel Fabregas, like, as this kind of new semi-celebrity conspiracy guy. He's a jiu-jitsu artist. His company is 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu that has all of these locations. I know around Southern California, but I wonder about nationwide. And I think this might be part of I think Operation Sacred Cow, which is what Alex Jones and InfoWars, and to a certain extent, Kevin Booth and Bill Hicks, although I don't think that they were willing participants from the beginning, something started being run through that and through Austin Access Television. I think people need to really look at these access television stations in cities as a place where people who are going to be effective in a community are infiltrated and things start to, to take on a different turn, but, Sacred Cow is coming to an end. I think that's what the signal, then we might be seeing the beginning, or not the beginning, but now the expansion of Operation 10th Planet, right? Which you have all these young men going to his jiu-jitsu centers. They're fans of him. They listen to his podcasts, right? He has a lot of energy. He's got a lot of charisma. And there's already like this confusion being sown in because he believes in flat earth, right? And he's talked about space being fake, but his thing is called 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. So already there's confusion there, right?
Yeah.
So it's this kind of cognitive dissonance that people who like him have to sort of weave through. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, and the 10th planet is Nibiru, right? Isn't that what the 10th planet is?
Is what?
Nibiru, right? Isn't that...
I assume so. Yeah, so, and jiu-jitsu is a really interesting kind of martial art, right? It's like using the resistance of your opponent, right? Isn't it? Or kind of roping them in and tricking them. And that's kind of like the mind fuck that's going on here, right?
Yeah, and the whole thing with
this is mental jiu-jitsu.
Right. And the whole thing with Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a really fascinating phenomenon, because you have to understand the relationship with Brazil and Japan in order to wrap your head around Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Now, if you look at a globe, and there's actually software out there which will allow you to find the antipode of like one part of the earth and on the other side of the earth. It's very hard. It's very hard to find antipodal relationships, believe it or not. But one antipodal relationship that truly exists is Brazil and Japan. I mean,
so is that kind of like the relationship between Joe Rogan and Alex Jones?
Antipodal, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So Brazil and Japan are antipodal. They are actually on the other side.
Yeah.
So what's interesting too is that not only are they antipodal, but if you go back in the history of Japan, which was thoroughly soaked in feudalism for a very long period of time, well, that ends.
Mm-hmm.
And when that ends, there are a bunch of Japanese people who are essentially out of work because they were working, for the shogun at that time, right? So they're no longer working, and they've got to find a place to go or do something to be employed. Now you go to Brazil, and the Brazilians, the Portuguese landowners, right? They had brought over Italians to come and work in Brazil, and the Italians didn't really like it all that much because it was too hot. It was, so there's we're kind of out of here. I mean, you still have some Italian families that are in and around Brazil, but a lot of them went back to Italy. So what happened was that there was this interesting connection between the Japanese who'd just been released from feudalism and the Brazilians who were looking for people to come work the land. So there was this migration of newly freed, Japanese workers, and they go to Brazil, and they have a beachhead in Brazil. In fact, Sao Paulo has the largest Japanese population outside of Japan. And this is where Jiu-Jitsu comes into play. Right? This is where the Gracies eventually hook up with their teacher, who, and now all this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu stuff has its origination in this antipodal relationship between Brazil and Japan. And
so that's interesting.
Got Eddie Bravo, right? So there you go.
It's making me think of a lot of the people who are into MMA and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that are the kind of guys that maybe would have had industrial jobs, right? And since that isn't available now, they're spending a lot of them either don't have satisfactory work or don't have work at all. They spend a lot of time at these martial arts gyms, right? These MMA gyms or jiu-jitsu gyms, and it becomes this sort of lifestyle, right? An all-encompassing lifestyle with the diet and the workouts, and they all listen to the Joe Rogan podcast too.
Yeah, right. It has become a lifestyle. And by the way, jiu-jitsu is the most effective martial art, bar none. Bar none. So
there's this is the raising of a new army.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I think it has elements of Fight Club to it. I mean, that's
totally. Yeah.
I think that's what you're getting to.
Fight Club, yeah.
But it's not just men. I mean, there are women also that have been drawn into the BJJ world and have, changed their lives and changed their bodies. The thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that you're able to grapple and wrestle and do all these moves, and you get really, really close, right? You're not, you get into these positions where you're pushing and pulling and using force and, redirecting force. But there's always a moment where you can tap out, right? It's kind of that tap out moment. So it allows people to have this contact on a frequent basis and allow them to get close to this point where, they're in a physical altercation. Yeah. But it's very controlled, right?
Yeah.
It's very controlled.
It's also interesting because this goes to the idea of people are getting frustrated because the world seems so out of control. They can't change the world, but they can change their bodies and their fitness in their own life. So aggression that may, or energy that may have been put towards looking outward now is like going in, which in some senses is good, right? Like we really can only change ourselves on the inside, but it is, wrapping people into this, what you're talking about, this sort of controlled martial art world, right? And if it's being, which under normal circumstances might be okay, but if it's being sort of not controlled, but in a lot of ways affected or influenced by people at the top with some funny ideas who have a cult of personality around them, then it sort of changes the true organic nature of the effect that this kind of disciplined art would have on the person practicing it.
Well, I think you're going to run into that no matter what. Like you go back to karate and look at the effect that Bruce Lee had.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee wasn't just a martial artist. I mean, I think Bruce Lee is one of the great philosophers of the 20th century. I agree. And so you're going to get some of that. That's part of the game.
Neither of these fools are any Bruce Lee, though.
No. I would totally agree with that. I wonder, though, if Bruce Lee actually really died. I mean, that's one of the that's one of those deaths that I think, is got a big question mark after it. That's just
you think he's on the island?
Maybe.
Yeah.
There was this guy that came over from China not long ago, and he was a Chinese dissident. He was blind, and I swear to God, he looked like Bruce Lee.
Huh.
And I thought to myself, isn't this, I mean, maybe, I'm not saying he is Bruce Lee, but if there was a guy that looked like Bruce Lee, and if they wanted to do a hidden in plain sight thing, that would have been the guy. He would have been the guy. So getting back to BJJ, what's fascinating about it is that sort of the hybrid is the MMA version, which is not just wrestling, right? But you're going to box too. So essentially what BJJ has done is it's pretty much like destroyed karate as we know it. I mean, karate still exists, but the explosion of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu far outweighs the development of karate. And then on the MMA side, it's taken over boxing. So just from that perspective, it in and of itself has become an operating principle, right? It has become almost a quasi-religious, kind of spiritual belief where people like Eddie Bravo are grafting in some other stuff. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've read stuff where, like, why do MMA people believe in conspiracies, right? So it kind of goes hand in glove in a lot of ways with that world, which is interesting, right? Totally interesting.
Well, that's total. But that is the essence of Fight Club. Yeah. Right. So it would be interesting to really understand what goes on at the deeper inner occult levels of these things, right? Like what goes on at night at the MMA gyms, right? Or in the middle of the night or early in the morning. And, the other thing that's interesting about Eddie Bravo is you always, so anytime you're have a conspiracy minded or whatever, right? One of the criticisms you'll get from people is like, oh, where did you learn about that? On the internet, on YouTube, right? And every time Eddie Bravo ever talks about any of these things he believes in, he just only refers to like YouTube videos he saw. So it's putting the idea out there that conspiracy theorists are really just like avid YouTube watchers, right? Not that any people could have done deep research or, been, educated in any kind of intellectual way that caused them to, see the problems in some of these narratives and stories and whatever. It just looks like some sort of YouTube phenomenon, right? Like only since the advent of YouTube has there been these kinds of conspiracy theorists, right?
Right.
So
I wanted to show you this picture of this guy. His name is Chen Guang Chen.
This is the guy?
Yeah. So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of him. The guy that I was talking about. Let me grab this with me one sec. When I first saw him, I thought, my God, this guy looks a lot like Bruce Lee. Okay, so there's one picture. And then let me do this other one here. Here we go. Let's see. So he came over when Obama was president. So that's a picture of him, right?
Huh.
And then there's this other one that, let me do this one here. Stop the share. I mean, doesn't that look like?
No, bring up a picture of Bruce Lee.
Okay, let me find one. Doesn't that kind of look like Bruce Lee, who might have aged, probably took pretty good care of himself?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go Bruce Lee.
Or who's been frozen cryogenically and just reawakened.
Let's see, let's get it. He was amazing, this guy. Let me find a good picture. Let's do this one.
I mean, someone like Bruce Lee goes along with I would classify him along the lines of someone like Yogananda, right? Who had a spiritual practice that involved the physical practice, right? Yeah. So it makes him not just a great athlete or martial artist, but a great philosopher and spiritual sort of, type as well, right?
Okay, so there's that picture. And then let's do another share screen.
Interesting.
Just food for thought. When I first saw this guy, I thought, wow, he looks suspiciously like Bruce Lee, right?
Interesting.
And the dark glasses and everything.
Now?
What's that?
How old would Bruce Lee be now?
Let's find out. Let's see. Bruce Lee, I think he was born in 30 something.
So that whole thing with Brandon Lee was very bizarre too, the way he died.
Very strange. So he's born in 1940. So he'd be up there.
Just my dad, a little older than my dad.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Dude, look at that corduroy shirt that Bruce Lee has on there. And that's something special. Wide ribbed corduroy shirt, man.
So Bruce Lee, Jimi Hendrix, and Quincy Jones all went to the same high school.
Oh, that's Seattle. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And apparently Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix knew each other too.
Yeah. Interesting.
And they're both Sagittarians. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I had so many things to say about the the Joe Rogan, Alex Jones thing, but I think we've hit on many of them. I think I was looking at the comment section on the, video yesterday, and a lot of people were really loved this, enjoyed it. Sargon of Akkad said he thought it was hilarious and funny and great and good, so I think I think it had some of its intended, what they were hoping for, and that this on some level seemed to have appeased some of Joe Rogan's audience. But those who are looking pretty closely, certainly all of us in our community have a lot of questions here. I know Pockets of the Future had a good video about, both of them having sold everyone out, and, which that happened a long time ago. It didn't just happen 2 days ago.
Right.
And again, what you were saying something to me about Alex Jones and the stuff he was saying about CIA. He mentioned a lot of times in there how many times his father had been approached by the CIA. And
I actually have that clip, and we can play that.
Yeah.
So, but before I play the clip, Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix were actually born on the same day, different years, same day.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. So let me line this clip up. So this is the two of them, and they're talking about how the CIA has pursued Alex all of his life. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Up here.
Yeah, and transport it through a spaceship onto another planet. And you could look through its eyes because you're somehow or another connected to it the same way they're connected to the satellites.
No, you're all being prepared for the video games where you're bow hunting and you're all that. You just saw the 1950s diagram of the VR goggles. Can we pull up the famous photo of...
You don't believe in any aliens, Eddie?
I don't believe they come from up there.
Pull up
interdimensional. I think they're from the same place we are. I think we're in this vast plane, and there's a lot of shit everywhere. They got us enclosed in this little thing.
You
learn, here's the thing, you learn what the plan is by the attack. They don't want us having kids. They want us demoralized. They want to break us down. They don't want us to think we can expand. And they don't want us to believe that there's space. And I'm not trying to attack you. They don't want third-dimensional resource expansion.
I don't even know what that is.
Well, they don't want us.
Third-dimensional resource expansion.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh, I don't know if I want
these
that
guys
or not.
Now, look, that's a 1950s diagram.
No.
And by the way, I never saw that. I'm glad he found the patent.
Yeah, that's
crazy. My dad told me, we had virtual reality. And then I talked to this scientist, and he put me in touch with somebody else, and then I found out other stuff. Let's just say this. I'm not in the CIA.
Me neither.
I'm not in the NSA.
Me neither.
But they've been tracking me my whole life.
You think they give you this information sometimes?
Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
It was the CIA. It was the former deputy director, basically the CIA section chief, founder of Delta Force, who got me to, like 2 weeks ago, said, Alex, you're not saying San Diego State. You need to go to San Diego State. He goes, we have the people. We're there. And just because he was famous MIT scientist and stuff, I went with that.
Oh.
So you think
they already had AI computers probably. I'm speculating, looking way out to set me. I mean, I don't know.
I'm sure there's people setting everybody up. If you think that, I told you about this, I don't know if I told you, but I told people to listen to this podcast. Woman Nate DeResta, and she had a podcast with Sam Harris where they went into detail about the operation that people had used to troll Facebook pages and Instagram pages and create these where the Russians had created these troll bots and these meme pages, hundreds of thousands of.
By the way, the Russians are all doing it. Everyone's doing it.
Everyone's doing
it. The idea that just Russians are.
Everyone's doing it. But the thing that was fascinating was she was saying that they organized a Muslim event across the street from a pro-Texas event.
Yeah, well, they want explosions.
They would have Black Lives Matter next to Blue Lives Matter. They'd set everybody up with everybody.
There's a Blue Lives Matter?
There's a lot of.
What was Jim Morrison at film school here in California trained on by the CIA?
What was he trained on?
He was trained on.
Can I hear this when I get back?
Let's hear a video.
Eddie has said this before, and I've said that's crazy.
No, don't end the podcast. I want to keep going.
I gotta pee. I'm not going to work.
He's going to get his instructions.
Did you hear what he said?
Huh?
He said, "I got a PP too."
Yeah. So there's something funny with that. They have coordinated pissing. So what's really interesting about some of that stuff that was just said was that. Okay. Well, now I know. I was listening to a little Josh Reeves last night, and I didn't hear the whole thing, but Josh Reeves was talking about there was things that they directly said in there that were aimed at him, right? I think there was things that were said in this podcast that are responses to some of the things you and I've talked about, which sounds crazy. I don't care if people think I'm crazy. Like, I got over that one a long time ago, but we've done a lot of talking about this stuff, right? And we've talked about the dynamics of this and the sacred cow and all that kind of stuff. And they addressed some of that stuff with the Bill Hicks thing in there. But Josh Reeves has also done a lot of talking about this. Josh Reeves was one of the first people to start exposing Alex Jones and his connection to CNP and stuff like that. And right there, what he was talking about having computers to see into the future, to know what Alex was going to do. When Josh Reeves talked about Alex Jones and his interaction with him back a period, when he first came across him back when he was still sort of a fan, I guess, or maybe not a fan, but hadn't done all this work yet to quite expose him. He talks about having run into Alex Jones at a premiere of a film and Alex Jones just looking at him and scowling. And Josh Reeves was, not very well known at the time in any way. But it seemed to him like Alex already knew then that many years later, Josh Reeves would be the one to expose him, which he was. He's done probably some of the highest quality work on exposing Alex Jones. So now I understand what Josh Reeves is talking about because I didn't hear his whole podcast yesterday. I would love to talk to Josh Reeves at some point. I've reached out to him before with no response. Some of his work is really interesting and fascinating. He's kind of an interesting personality, but I'd love to talk to you, Josh Reeves, if you hear this either here sometime or on Off Planet Radio or whatever. But he has this piece, I can't remember if it was in his Spellcasters documentary or one of the other ones, where he talks about this moment with Alex Jones. And in hindsight, him now wondering if Alex Jones already knew back then through predictive technologies that Josh Reeves would be the one to expose him.
So there was a period a couple of years ago when I think it was probably around 2016, between 2015 and 2016. And I would have a theme on one of my podcasts. I think this is back when I was actually doing a lot of but Blog Talk and then Spreaker stuff. And then I would hear it on Alex Jones's show.
Yep.
And it was happening so consistently that it was kind of freaking me out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Joe and Alex are sitting listening to us and responding. I'm saying that people that monitor all the alternative media activity see what ideas are starting to rise, and then they feed that into the responses that the kinds of things that the bigger stars will talk about. But yeah, I've had that kind of stuff too. I mean, sometimes it happens almost immediately when you and I have talked about something that in that next week there'll almost seemingly be a response to something we've said. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that's been happening to you forever and ever, because you've been in this game a lot longer than I am. Not game, but what I mean.
It happens quite a bit. But there was a period there for about a year where I was starting to kind of get pissed off a little bit, to be honest with you. It's like, yeah, okay, well, whether or not somebody's actually trolling, my podcast and then grabbing ideas and feed them to Alex, which I think is quite possible, by the way.
It could be that, or it could even just be a kind of software technology that's pulling out keywords and then, whoever his producers are being fed those ideas of things to talk about or whatever, right? Like, making, it could be either, it could be both, could be somewhere in the middle. These kinds of Palantir and Oracle softwares, right. These are just the public facing side of those technologies.
Right. Well, I think what we see with Alex is the public side of Alex, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's another side to him that is actually engaged in the things that he's talking about.
Sure.
Absolutely. Now,
I think there's a part of Alex that is very genuine, and there's a part of Alex that is completely MK Ultra mind controlled and working for, offshoots of intelligence agencies. What Absolutely. He says about being, his dad always being approached by the CIA and himself being tracked by the CIA, like, even if it's true that his dad said no, those kind of approaches are really interviews to see what kind of programs not known to you that they can put you in, right? You know, Alex has all sorts of funny connections to stuff, and whether he was aware of them at the beginning or not, he's in it now, right? Access television could be being run by intelligence agencies. Who knows?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. An interesting, another interesting interface here. Let me bring this up. We can look at this. And
the other thing that was important that was said was Eddie Bravo trying to confirm to everybody that Alex isn't a Zionist shill, and the information that he offered as proof of that is that he knows him. So
yeah, they did that right at the end of the podcast, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the confirmation that Alex is not a Zionist shill, is that Eddie Bravo knows him.
So do a little screen share here.
Dentist, right?
This is from the Illuminati card game.
Alex's dad is a dentist.
Alex's dad is a dentist. So this is an interesting little piece here, because not only is Alex's dad a dentist, he's also the head of Alex's company, which is, I think, what it's called, Free Talk or Free Speech Enterprises or something like that.
And he also referenced several times, at least once during the podcast, people showing up in a van at his work, threatening him, saying he put a microchip in his head.
Right.
Yeah. So that's an interesting sort of.
So another little piece that's connected to this is, I believe, the creator of the Illuminati card game is a guy by the name of Steve Williams, and he's from Austin.
Well, this is something I wanted to bring up. This whole thing with Austin, you know, the more I really feel into Austin is the center of all of this. I mean, how you and I have both been drawn to live there at times in our life. Freeman has lived there. Lots of people that I know and that I think are some of the most interesting people that I've known have been through there at certain times of their life, right? There seems to, you know, and there's lots of stuff about Austin, both energetically, geographically, you know, obviously with the stuff with the music and there's man-made, there's just so much weird stuff there that, like, you know, and you go look at how many companies are based out of there and sort of what's going on, you know, and all the people that can sort of interact there. And it's a really interesting combination of very libertarian people and very progressive people. This is the petri dish. Austin is the petri dish from which all of these operations are born. I mean, even going back to some of my stuff with the infiltration of the rave and the dance music scene, like it was very much happening there in Austin as much as it was happening in a big city like Los Angeles, right? Like there's something, and you know, how is the alternative media really is based out of Austin as opposed to a big city. This is the perfect little controlled laboratory, right? If you look at even the way Austin is set up and sort of what's going on around it, it really is almost like, you know, a controlled laboratory condition for testing something.
Well, to your point, if you look at UT, so there's some very interesting things that UT has associated.
That was where the first school shooting was too.
Yeah, that was the tower shooter.
Clock tower.
Yeah. It has almost all of Aleister Crowley's accumulated works at the UT library.
Isn't that, yeah, Freeman's talked a lot about that, hasn't he?
Right. It also has the Gutenberg Bible.
Yeah.
And it has almost all of the collected works of Ernest Hemingway. So there's a lot going on there. Now, according to Alex, he says there's a nuclear reactor.
There is. But I also think there's some sort of time technology under Mount Bonnell outside of Austin. Yeah. I think there's all sorts of weird things. I think there's something else going on sort of on the west side of Austin on the way out to like some of the lake communities out there. I think there's some weird things going on over there near a reservoir. There's Edwards Aquifer. There's that runs under Austin. There's 7 man-made lakes around it. There's Barton Springs, which is an unusual place. There's the Greenbelt. I'm trying to think of all the funky kind of stuff that there is. It's a very strange place. I mean, it's in some ways, it's an amazing place. I had some of the best times of my life there, but I also had some of the strangest and, in hindsight, at the time they didn't seem terrifying. In hindsight, now that I understand what some of them were, strangest and scariest experiences of my life there.
Yeah. It's one of those places that on the surface is like really cool and chill, and there's something else going on underneath.
There's a very dark undertone there.
Yeah,
it's fun up top, and dark underbelly. And the way they have the downtown, which is surrounded by all the water, and then like all that drinking and partying going on in this little center spot, almost like an offering, an offering to the extra dimensional entities that are sitting right outside of our visual perception, right? There's a lot of partying and a lot of weird stuff that goes on. This could be said about Los Angeles as well and lots of other places, but Austin is unique in how small of a city it is, but how much effect it has on the current culture of this country, both through technology and media and Hollywood and music, everything. And
the Al building, right?
The Al building or the L building?
Al, O-W-L, Al. The
Owl building, yes. Owl building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that again?
Here, let me see if I can get a visual of this. This is a.
I think I've heard Freeman talk about it before, but
there's the Owl building, and it's very close to, the Capitol. I'm going to bring this up here.
Maybe we should do an Austin mash with Freeman sometime.
That would be cool. He knows a lot about Austin.
Let's see. Let's arrange that. That would be cool.
Okay, so this is the Owl building.
Of course, right downtown. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and it stares at the Capitol.
Yes.
And if you walk around the Capitol, you'll see all kinds of Freemasonic.
Yes, and all these weird buildings, their reflection is in the water too, which is really important to people in secret societies, that their big buildings be reflected in the bodies of water.
So I've heard that there's like nefarious activities that go on at this level.
Sure. Yeah. There's like in some of these like buildings, a lot of these like clubs with dance music that are open, late night and stuff are down in the bottom or like in storefronts right, very, very close to that. And yeah, I see people going into those buildings all hours of the day and night, going up top. I used to look at it was always fascinating to me when I'd be leaving the Austin City, back in the very early days when I lived in Austin and the parties were still at Austin City Music Hall. And, I would leave the party under psychedelic conditions, and I'd be driving. My apartment was just outside of downtown on South Congress, and I'd be driving and to look at the night sky. It would still be dark. It'd be 6 o'clock in the morning. And Austin looked so interesting to me under those conditions. And there was always doing a lot of work downtown because it was growing so rapidly, and some of these cranes and things that they had looked like, to me, with these buildings, looked like the needle from the record player hitting the record platter, right? It's almost like the city being played the way a DJ plays a record. I used to have those thoughts all the way back then, before I was really awake to all this, like back in 1999 and 2000, like what is actually going on here right now at this moment? There's what seems to be going on. There's what's really going on. They're not the same. But I'd have that moment of being able to sort of pierce the veil,
Right. Well, I think it's a deceptively complex city.
Yep.
And there's a ton going on there. And I'm outside of that zone now. I live further west. And so I really haven't spent a lot of time in Austin intensely over the last year, but in and out, right?
Yeah.
But last couple of weeks I'd been in Austin, and I had some dinner there, and I had some lunch there, and spent some time in a cafe. And as you kind of move into sort of North Austin, which is the new, south of Congress area, because that's where it's more full.
Up where the Domain is and all that and the triangle and all that stuff.
Right, and just a little bit south of that area, like basically from 45th on up, right?
Yeah.
The vibe is so different and so strange now. Like I've been gone a year, and I don't even really recognize the vibe in some ways. It almost feels like it's become kind of this almost Hunger Game-ish kind of, sort of Pan Am, which is it almost feels like that in some ways. Like the energy is like really low, and people speak really softly, and the fashions are,
I haven't been there since 2016. I would like to take a trip back there sometime.
You should check it out, because in a year, the energy has really, really changed.
Like I wonder if there's like a frequency net that's been kind of cast over it that is really affecting the, because to me it used to be such a free and wild place, right?
Austin had an aura and a reputation of being kind of an outlaw city.
Amazing, yeah.
Where people like Freeman and Alex Jones could go.
Emily Moyer and Robert Phoenix.
Right. It doesn't have that vibe at all now.
Yeah.
It feels like it's becoming an Android city. And by the way, it is a city that is the flagship city for Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030.
Yeah. Well, also we have to remember that Dell and Apple are both have major, stuff going on there. So in a lot of ways, it is an Android city. A lot of the people that I knew from the party scene work at Dell and at Apple. You know what I mean? So the same people who are influencing the music and the culture, a lot of the DJs work at those places, right? So it is, it's kind of the same here. It's a pretty easy city to Androidify.
Well, yeah. So Austin is definitely, I think Austin in a lot of ways, like Atlanta, I think of Austin, Atlanta as being these two cities that are kind of the new model for the new America, America, the new Atlantean America.
Yep.
I think those are cities that are reflective of that. And getting back to Alex Jones and Bill Hicks and the whole sacred cow thing. Bill Hicks and Kevin Booth, they come from Houston. That's where they come from.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole NASA thing is, right? So it's all part of that world. So when he's wearing that NASA shirt, he's he's signaling. And I don't think Alex Jones is Bill Hicks.
I don't think so either. But I think Alex Jones is a character that Bill Hicks talked about. Like if
absolutely.
I think I've said this last time is I read an autobiography or a biography of Bill Hicks in which there was a chapter where he talked about a character for a skit thing he wanted to create, and it sounded just like Alex Jones. So I think in a certain way, Alex Jones picked up right there. So Alex Jones is a character that was created by the brilliance of Bill Hicks. And I don't think Bill Hicks was a nefarious, in-on-it guy. And I don't think Terrence McKenna was a nefarious, in-on-it guy, but they were doing something that got infiltrated by intelligence agencies, operatives, and corporations. And so whatever their legacy is has been infiltrated and has been used to control people.
Well, I mean, let's be clear. The CIA, the NSA, and other pocket groups have been involved in psychedelic research for a very long time.
Forever. And these guys are, and all of these people that we've talked about today are a product of that.
Right. And Terrence obviously was getting funding for his work. That's the way it goes, right? I mean, that's the way it goes. Was he somebody who was a CIA shill? No, I don't think so. Did he take funding from them? Sure, he did.
He was doing what he was going to do anyway. And if he, I think he was probably naive in some ways. In other ways, he's like, I don't care. I just want to be able to get high and talk about it and, and explore those psychedelic realms and talk to others who do. I don't think his plot was to, be out there helping to institute an MK Ultra operation on the wider public. I don't think
No, I don't think so either. I mean, now Tim Leary, that's a whole other story.
Tim Leary, totally different. Some of these other guys that were, Ken Kesey, all those guys knew what was going on.
Yeah, Ken stepped out of the game. He realized what was happening. He's like, I'm done. I'm out, right? So in a Terrence McKenna.
Gordon Wasson, all those guys knew what was happening.
Oh, Wasson, big time.
Yeah, but I think Terrence just found himself in the, he had a knack. He had a knack for what he did, and he found himself in the middle of something that he didn't have the personality to want to care about all that kind of stuff. No. He just wanted to do what he was doing. And same with Bill Hicks on a certain level. Yeah.
So I actually met Terrence McKenna back in 1996.
At the rave.
I met him in Austin.
Oh, okay.
I met him in Austin, and what was I doing then? I was reading tarot cards, and I was hanging out in Austin, and I was working the Whole Life Expo.
Yeah. So
I wasn't staying at the hotel downtown by the event center, but I jumped in there anyway to have breakfast, right? I was kind of like, I'm going to have some breakfast. So I go in and I get right next to Terrence, and he's getting, his breakfast. And I talked to him and I looked at him and I thought to myself, this guy is not well.
Mm-hmm.
He's not well. And he looked kind of gray. And then about 6 months after that, we find out that he's got that tumor in his brain.
Yeah, I mean, they were done with him. Like they had gotten what they needed from him. And at a certain point, when a certain person starts to get older, they figure out what's going on, and he probably wasn't going to tell her. Same with Bill Hicks, right? Like at a certain point, they had crossed the barrier, but like they were not controllable anymore, or they had gotten what they needed from this person, and it's sayonara.
It's really interesting. We talk about these areas like Austin.
Joe and Alex are in danger now.
I think Alex is.
Yeah. Well, Alex is in danger of having a heart attack if you just looked at him.
Alex, I've talked to people who are medical professionals. He looks like he's pre-stroke.
Months away.
He's pre-stroke. He's pre-stroke.
Yeah.
He's right there pre-stroke, right?
Yep.
And I was convinced that he was going to have a freaking heart attack while he was on that show.
Me too. Yeah. Watching his head, like the veins in his head pop out. And
yeah. I mean, when he got pissed at Eddie Bravo, I mean, I really felt like he, you know, like if he didn't think Eddie Bravo could take him, he might have assaulted Eddie Bravo in that moment. I don't know. I mean, he was at moments.
Other times he knew he was playing, right? That's what his progress, he goes in and out of character and I don't know if it's in and out of character or in and out of program or if they're one and the same or related or whatever, but it's something like that.
Yeah. So I think they're going to write Alex out of the script here soon. The other thing that was really interesting about that interview was, and this was real, I feel like he has grave misgivings about attaching himself to the Trump train. Yeah. I mean, you could just see it. He's like,
well, that's where he got tricked. That's how they're going to be able to write him out of the script, because he gave his brand up. His brand had been conspiracies and truth, and he sold his brand out to, you know, nationalism, populism, and politics.
And I think he did it for a couple different reasons. I think number one, he was probably being compensated. I think that's important. Okay. Yep. Number two, I think he made, it was like a gambit. And he said, okay, this is where I'm going all in. I'm pushing all my chips in here because this is the time to do it. This is the guy to represent to some degree what I think is going to be the all-in moment. Yep. And the House took all his chips.
Yep. I agree.
It's done. Yep. Right. And as far as Rogan goes, this is the one thing that I said that Alex actually said as well. When you and I talked about this, I said that he made a deal primarily because he's got kids. And Alex said, I know that's what you did. You did it for your family. You did it for your kids.
You did it to survive with their family and your kids.
Absolutely. And I think Alex is correct about that.
I think Alex did the same thing at a certain point.
At a certain level, but he sacrificed his kids.
Yeah.
Alex sacrificed his kids. And, you know, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Another thing for another day, yeah.
But he kind of did. All in all, I think the message of this is that the game is over. The conspiracy game is over. Conspiracy world is over. It was a limited hang. It's done. Yep. And the meeting of the two of them is like the capstone on this quote unquote truth movement. It's done. Yeah. It's over with. You know, YouTube is shutting it down. Yep. They got shitloads of views. They've made money off of it. You know, they're going up.
This will be the most listened to podcast in the history of podcasts and the most watched YouTube video. Yeah.
But YouTube is putting the screws to anti-vaxxers. They're putting the screws to the 9/11 people. Yep. You know, they're putting the screws to everybody else. But they'll let you talk about aliens. Aliens are fine. You can talk about aliens till the cows come home, till the sacred cows come home, right?
Right. Which is why this is the most we've ever heard Alex talking about aliens. He only ever talks about it really anymore when he's on the Joe Rogan podcast. But that's the new acceptable truth. That's the new acceptable line of questioning. Is interdimensional aliens.
Right. Or extraterrestrial aliens for that matter too. So I think that's it. I think they're putting a wrap on this stuff. They're going to be shutting people down. I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing kind of this more open discussion and debate about, well, do we really need free speech?
Right.
You're starting to have these philosophical questions come up that maybe free speech is something that it's not a luxury. It's actually become more of a burden, upon our participation.
Right.
So we're in very interesting times here, as it relates to this kind of material, and that was the capstone moment. That's
those of us who are interested in free speech are going to have to evacuate to the pocket universe, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to do different things. I mean, this is what happened when heretics were chased down during the Middle Ages and the latter Middle Ages. They had to create symbolic language. They had to create secret societies, secret orders in order to keep their knowledge.
Are we going to create a secret society? Right?
Well, maybe. You know, we're both wearing hoods. Should we put our hoods on?
Yeah, you guys. And this is like this is we're the hood. This is the we're building the movement towards the Matrix MASH hoodies that we're going to come out with one of these days soon. So
that's right.
So we're just getting the look going, cultivating an appearance for this program, and there will be Matrix Mash hoodies coming.
We've been wondering if you guys were picking up on this. This has all been very symbolic.
This is right. This is
this moment.
The knighthood of the Matrix mashing.
So what we're thinking of doing is like, because if you bring the hood down really low, putting like a third eye right there,
or just some kind of symbol right on top here. We're going to create a cool symbol.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there will be Matrix Mash hoodies here at some point. Yeah.
You could be part of our secret society.
Yeah.
the not so secret society. I remember
the one that we announced on YouTube.
So I used to work for this like really crazy industrial music label back in the 90s. It was called Silent Records. Mm-hmm. And like, well, that's kind of interesting. So what happened was I was in between jobs. I'm trying to figure, well, I just got divorced. What am I going to do with my life? So I went to my old college. I went to the job board, and I found this interesting like internship for this independent record company. I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. And at that time, I think it was around 30, 31, about 32. Like, okay, let me check this out. So I go to this place, and it's in the warehouse district, south of Market, in San Francisco. And I go there, and the building is this kind of old meat packing facility, right? And they turned it into loft space, and artists were living there. So I go to this place, and I sit down with the guy who runs the company. Very intense dude, bald head, he's pierced, leather jacket, totally buff. I'm like, oh, well, he introduces himself. People know who he is. You just all you have to do is look up Silent Records. And so I go, wow, this is cool. Yeah, well, what do you need here? Well, we need people that can write and do a few things. I'm like, okay, so let me check out your music. And I thought I knew a lot about music. And all of a sudden, I go down this freaking rabbit hole. And I'm looking at and listening to music I never thought I'd actually be listening to, like really, really dark industrial music. And there was this, to give you an example, there was this one guy named John Duncan, and he had a record called Klaar, Klaar, 2 A's, and the whole record was him sticking a microphone up his rectum and then sampling it and then turning it into like industrial noise. Okay, that was his record. Okay, all right. This was sort of the music that I was dealing with at that time, and it was really a trip. Very, very dark. Boyd Rice, Satanist, right? We had his stuff, Genesis P-Orridge. In fact, Genesis P-Orridge came in one day, and this is when he was on the lam from, Genesis Psychic TV. Do you know his stuff at all?
No, no.
Genesis P-Orridge is this guy. He was with this seminal industrial group called Throbbing Gristle.
Oh, I know about Throbbing Gristle.
Okay, so the church of Psychic TV and stuff like that. They're, he's a Thelemite. He's a Crowley-esque Thelemite. That's what he is. So Genesis was away in Nepal, and they went to his house, and they found all this child porn stuff in his house. So he never went back to England. He moved to the United States, and guess where he lived? He lived in Petaluma, and he was neighbors of Terrence McKenna.
Of course.
So, and now I don't think they were seeking each other out, but it's one of these like ideas and concepts, like Austin, which is this kind of attractor, right?
And what else is in Petaluma? The Noetic,
Ions.
The Institute of Noetic Science, right?
Right. Ions is in Petaluma. Yeah. And so Petaluma, Sebastopol. I think they were in Sebastopol, if I'm not mistaken. Same area. It's the same area, right? Yeah. It's also where Bohemian Grove is.
Yes, Bohemian Grove. It's where Polyclass thing happened. It's where Winona Ryder's from. There's a lot of actors from that area.
Jussie Smollett, born in Santa Rosa, right?
Ah, I didn't know Jussie Smollett. Right. Yes, Juicy Smollett. Yes.
Right. And the other thing, what's interesting about Santa, that's also where Luther Burbank is from. And
okay, so that's fascinating. Luther Burbank, I've been reading Yogananda, and Yogananda his book is dedicated to Luther Burbank, who was a very fascinating horticulturist, right? So
yes.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, you could go to the Luther Burbank house and say it's really trippy.
He was very interesting with some of these hybrids that he created of flowers, and he sounds like a really interesting guy. But he definitely created his own unique way, his own unique style of horticulture. And if you think about it, that's what each of these people we're kind of talking about today has done. They've created their own unique way of presenting something else that others had presented in a typical way prior to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So Genesis comes by one day to basically sell us a bunch of his product that he has in this storage shed. And he came in, and it was yeah, exactly. It was like,
made you like voodoo donuts or something like that.
Could I get some holy water, please? Can I get a slide of holy water? Anyway, so this was this record company, and so I was involved in like sales. Became the sales manager, and I get on the phone and I try to sell, these recordings of guys like, sampling their body parts, right? And so I thought to myself, well, what would be
these guys sampling their body parts?
Yeah, that's what the guy did. He like stuck a microphone with his bum.
Oh, the sampling. Okay, okay. Back to the microphone up the anus.
Well, he wasn't the only one.
I thought you meant like tasting cannibalism, like tasting body, sampling body.
Well, some of these records, right?
Right.
They're really on that edge, really borderline. So I was talking to the guy who owned the company. I said, you know what? We've got to come up with this advertising plan where we're like a secret society. And that what we're trying to do is, have this really kind of dark and unusual music sort of percolate up to the public. And let's base it on like Freemasonry and symbols. Be really, really cool. Really cool. And he was like, I don't know. But essentially, what I was thinking about is happening, right? Ultimately, that's where advertising went.
Right.
Advertising and media glommed onto this.
Totally.
And now we're swimming
in Illuminati nonsense.
We're swimming in the illuminated ocean now.
Yeah.
And they're doing, I think one of the best companies that does this, by the way, is Taco Bell.
Oh, I was just thinking when I said Illuminati nonsense, the chips are now a symbol of the Illuminati, right?
Taco Bell is freaking brilliant, man. They're brilliant. Yeah. They've embraced the Illuminati conspiracy and turned it into a food program. How you doing on time? Are you good? You still want?
I'm good.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's transition. Talk about the Bob Kraft thing. You want to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay.
You kind of, obviously I'd been hearing little bits and pieces about it, and you brought it to my attention in a more significant way. I do my best to ignore, news on a certain level. It's very weird. Like, I was actually just talking about it with my dad this morning, trying to get a quote unquote normal person's perspective on this. He finds it strange too, probably for different reasons, but he brought up something I didn't know and didn't hear you say, in that Bob Kraft just got a humanitarian award from Israel.
Oh, he does a ton of stuff for Israel.
Yeah.
A ton of stuff. The thing that I think is really interesting about Bob Kraft, who by the way, I don't think he's a very interesting person. But,
right.
But the thing that is interesting is that after he won, I think it was the second Super Bowl,
mm-hmm.
he was hanging out, and I've talked about this before, he was hanging out with Putin. And,
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So he takes off his Super Bowl ring.
Oh, the Super Bowl ring. Yes, I did hear you say that.
And he puts it on, and Putin puts it on his finger, and he never gives it back. Right? Yeah. I'm like, holy smokes. Like, that was like a magical totemic moment.
Mm-hmm.
That
Are we going to find out that Trump has gone to this massage parlor too, and that this is the connection to Russian collusion?
Well, so they say there was, back in the day, when I say back in the day, I'm talking about like maybe 10 years ago,
mm-hmm.
maybe 5 years ago, when a story would break, the first details that would emerge from the story were the ones that you really wanted to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's how it always was with the shootings and the false flags and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Now everything is so controlled, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So locked down. They're controlling the entire event.
Well, because they have technology that's able to block, like whenever these events happen now, there's like interceptors. So if people try to call the police because they think something real is happening, whoever's controlling the event intercepts it and picks it up. Right.
Yeah. Wow. There you go. So one of the things that came out early in this Bob Kraft thing is that they were talking about really big names. They had really big names associated with it. Mm-hmm. And then there was one really big name that they had not released to the public yet. So there was a lot of speculation going on.
Mm-hmm.
Some people thought, well, is it Tiger Woods because he lives there in Jupiter?
Right.
Is it Michael Jordan? Because he lives there.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Donald Trump? Because I don't think it would be Trump. I don't think Trump would be that stupid. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't. I don't think it would. I don't think it would be Trump.
Right.
And I think he's too cagey for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Kraft is very tight with Israel. I think he's got. I think he has a stadium or something named after him there.
Huh.
And what he did, I think it was about a year ago, he took a bunch of NFL players to Israel as part of this kind of exchange program.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he's got deep ties to the Zionist satellite.
Yeah.
Is Israel, Zionist state satellite.
That was the part my dad had the most to say about, Yeah. I kind of brought up some of the things that, we had talked about, and like, it's interesting how, this is coming up at the same time that the, spotlight is starting to be refocused on Jeffrey Epstein again.
That's right.
So that's kind of interesting. Are those two things connected, or is one trying to cover for the other, with this being something to cover up for that? And then, the absurdity of billionaires going to an $80 Chinese massage parlor. And then, you had told me that there were some things about a possible Chinese mafia, different kinds of stuff like this. So where are you at with your current thoughts on what's going on here?
So I was talking with Robert Bonomo the other day, and he was telling me about the Chinese mafia and how the Chinese mafia is engaged in a network of trafficking, right? So it's not like the girls just kind of show up one day and, oh, we're here in America. Oh, come work at our massage parlor. And then they get there and they're going to take their passport. No, the massage parlors are part of a network.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're connected to this Chinese mafia that are bringing the girls into the country.
I would say the same thing goes for Vietnamese and nail salons.
Probably. I would say that that's probably true. So what happens is in the conditions for the women, and they're young women, let's be clear about that. They're young women, and they live there on the premises.
In the back.
In the back. They're not really allowed to leave. If they leave, they're going with somebody that's escorted, very tight controlled situation.
Person running the app.
That's where they spend the majority of their time. So what we're looking at here is we're beginning to peel the layer back on this network of these massage parlors and the girls that go in there that are essentially being trafficked by the Chinese mafia, who the Chinese government knows plenty about, right? I mean, they're hand in glove. Now, what was interesting about this, and this gets down to sort of the micro level of this thing. I was trying to find some information on the website, or on the massage parlor, Orchids of Asia. And I type it in, and it was immediately taken to a website that provides people with a map of happy ending massage parlors all across the country. Okay. So Orchids of Asia was rated the #1 happy ending massage parlor in Florida. So think about that. I'm just an average person looking to have this, theoretical experience, right? And it just pops right up. So it is like, it's not really hidden. I guess it's hidden in plain sight. But if you're somebody who's worth the amount of money that Bob Kraft is worth, or John Childs, or John Havens, both of those guys are part of this. You add their fortunes together, and we're talking about the GDP of like a third world country, essentially, right? Or maybe even above that. Why are they going there?
Yeah, there's got to be something else going on. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, sure, we have like Robert Downey Jr. and Eddie Murphy and them used to go to MacArthur Park to buy their crack, right? Like, I guess sometimes for drug addicts, like that sort of risky behavior is part of the thrill. But at a certain point, it's just stupid, right? This seems even a little more stupid than that, right? This doesn't make sense. The thing that keeps popping to my mind is they have lots of these operations that they let go and run and things like that for a long time. The Jeffrey Epstein case has come up again, and it's come up for a couple of reasons. But I think one of the main reasons that is not being talked about anywhere other than the serious underground media, is some of the work that has been done by several people, but including my friend Derek Brose over at Conscious Resistance and his documentary series on the Finders and the Finders connection to Jeffrey Epstein. And the Finders are a cult in South Florida, right, that trafficked in certain kind of children. And I'm going to have him back on the show to get further into this. It came up towards the end of our last interview. I'm going to have him back to do an interview about, his documentary, just about his documentary, but also about the recruiting tactics for the children for this kind of cult, quote, slash sex, sex trafficking kind of organization. It is related to MK Ultra, and some of it has to do with the children's eyes, right? And this condition called heterochromia. And I will be getting into this further on Off Planet Radio and some other stuff, but he found that this was a main tactic, right? And this could be something that really breaks open a lot of the human trafficking and mind control projects that go on here in this country with American children, right? And with a lot of, Bill Clinton is involved in this Jeffrey Epstein thing, and Donald Trump, and there's a lot of really big people. This seems to me like this could be a second tier operation, and they're choosing to expose it now to suck all the air out of it so that not as much attention is being paid to what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein and with the Finders.
Could be. That could be. But I think anytime you get these things together, there are so many different pistons that are firing, simultaneously. There are a lot of different nodes that come together, right? But I think that what was going on inside that massage parlor and what made it so provocative for these guys to throw down $70, $80 is likely those girls were anywhere between 13 to 16 years old. That's my sense, right? Yeah. And, when you look at somebody who is Asian, sometimes it's very difficult to tell the age. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's Asian can be in their 30s and they may look really, really young, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Conversely, somebody who's in their teens may look like an older, younger woman. So there's this real, fuzzy sort of,
totally,
realm that these guys are playing in. So I think, number one, the reason why they were so compelled to go there is because it wasn't somebody who was, 45 years old and decided, it was like, because that has no interest for these guys. So they were getting involved with kids.
But still, why not pay to have the kids brought to the house?
Well, that's a really, really good question.
Why not pay to have the set up at a hotel or some, safe house or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Why it's like, it doesn't make sense why this guy would be going to get a haircut at Supercuts.
Right. Well, yes, except maybe the one who's doing the cutting is, a little underage. Anyway, I hear what you're saying, right? I hear what you're saying. But the other thing too about this is why did they allow this thing with Bob Kraft to get that far? Mm-hmm. Because they wanted to be able to do this at the time that the Jeffrey Epstein thing got exposed. Could be.
They're holding it on the back burner.
Could be. Well, but this just happened recently, right? These are new visits for him. It wasn't like this happened a year ago.
Right, but this place, this could have been set up and planned to be sort of rolled out at this time, right?
Or the Epstein thing could have been set up and planned to roll.
Either way, it could be the other way. I could have it backwards. Yeah.
I think that's probably how the time might work around it.
Yeah, it might be okay, we have this other thing now. We can, do this Epstein thing and it won't get the kind of coverage it would have gotten otherwise. So we can bury that because this other thing is happening.
But then at the same time, the R. Kelly thing goes off.
Right.
So now you've got competing sort of sex scandal stories.
Right.
Epstein, Kraft, Haven's Childs, and R. Kelly all happening simultaneously. The R. Kelly
thing has been going on for 20 years now.
Right, but that's like deep cover for the Jussie Smollett case. Mm-hmm. Because it's Kim Fox from Illinois who's essentially
charging. Can you explain this to the people?
Okay, so I talked about this. I think it was on Sunday night and earlier this week, but I'll do it again. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Kim Fox she is the Attorney General for the state of Illinois. Okay, she recused herself very early on in the Jussie Smollett scandal because of her close relationship with Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
She worked on Kamala Harris's campaign and vice versa. She calls Kamala Harris a mentor. Okay, so very close-knit relationship. Jesse Smollett has a very close relationship with Kamala Harris.
So should we call Kamala Harris a handler, maybe?
Well, more than likely, and I was very early on the tip that Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Barack Obama were all colluding with Jesse Smollett to do this thing.
Yeah. Well, also, guys, go look into Kamala Harris's controversial thing from about 4 or 5 years ago when she was just in the state government in California, and her connection to what was called the Fraternal Order Masonic Police Force, or the Fraternal Order of Masonic Police. And then you'll get to see what kind of nonsense she's been involved in. Absolutely.
And so what Kim Foxx did is she recused herself, because that should tell everybody everything they need to know about this.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is representing, theoretically, the highest position of jurisdiction and adjudication in the state of Illinois. And she steps out of this thing. So what she does on the heels of that is like, well, let's go after R. Kelly. Because R. Kelly, some of the women that R. Kelly had dealt with, and when I say dealt, I mean dealing with, meaning he kept them captive.
So this to distract from the Jesse Smollett thing, the same way that the Kraft thing will distract from the Epstein thing.
Right. So the women, these are old charges. R. Kelly's already gone through a court case, and I'm not saying R. Kelly is innocent. Okay. Yeah. I mean, pretty much everything that's being said about R. Kelly, they've got it on video.
It's like people being surprised when that, at the idea that Donald Trump is a con man, right? We already know that, and we already know that R. Kelly likes little girls. It's like, not that it's not okay, it's disgusting, but this has been an accepted part of his persona and pop culture for a long time.
Right, and there's even a documentary called "Surviving R. Kelly," and the girls who were part of that. Well, they're on a book tour now, and they're actually using the R. Kelly experience to advance their brand, right? Which is, this is the world we're living in now. But so it's a lot of yesterday's news with R. Kelly, and now Kim Foxx has decided, well, we're gonna make a big deal out of this.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna charge him. We're gonna, but it's happening simultaneously.
Interesting, the name Kim Foxx too,
with 2 X's, by the way.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, you think of porn videos as being double X or triple X.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now, the other thing with the Jesse Smollett case, which bears some scrutiny, is the fact that, first of all, I think he's going to get off.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he's going to get off is because he's been tried essentially in the court of public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the hammer that the police chief from Chicago threw down at that press conference, he basically said, you're tried, and you're guilty, and having the ability to have a fair trial now, based on
that was intentional, right?
Yeah.
That was intentional. They don't want to be able to have a fair trial, so now he's going to be the victim. He's going to win the oppression Olympics because we're not going to be able to have a trial to find out what actually happened, right? And then he was oppressed by the media and the court of public opinion, so he wins the oppression Olympics on 2 counts.
And not only that, but it provides cover for any kind of real investigation about what was behind the events and who was behind the events.
And I think this goes to like the blurring of the lines between any form of reality and fiction anymore, right? He is an actor on a show called Empire. United States is a certain kind of empire. Chicago is one of the headquarters of that certain kind of empire, right? And here you have a guy using the same actors that were on his show to do this thing. They're trying, what is it? Lisa always quotes this when she's on our show at the end of her emails. The former head of the FBI said that we'll know our disinformation campaign has been successful when everything the American public believes is a lie. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And so this is like, this could very easily have been an episode of Empire, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Total episode of Empire.
Maybe it's entirely possible that script writers for Empire wrote this script.
Could be.
That they received funding for it.
Right. And he even wrote a check.
Right?
He wrote a check.
Who writes checks anymore?
Right, exactly. So that's going on with the Smollett thing.
I can't even find my checkbook.
So that's going on with Smollett, and I don't think he's going to get a fair trial. And I think it's going to get tossed out, and then we'll move on to the next, media perpetrated hoax to divide and conquer us.
Yep.
Clearly. So I wanted to bring up this one other thing before circling back to Kraft. This is the one piece that occurred to me that might come out of this. Since we now are entering into this period where cannabis is legal, late-term abortions are legal, mushrooms may soon be illegal. So we're heading into this realm of almost libertarian-esque legality. Some of the noise that I've heard around Kraft is that prostitution should be legal.
Right.
And these are people that are taking a very serious kind of stance around this. 2 consenting adults, et cetera, world's oldest profession, et cetera. So in this kind of time of liberally,
I think that's an interesting idea. And I think people, as these things become legalized, like people, I'm always been the kind of person that I'm more for the idea of decriminalization rather than legalization, because legalization provides, I think, an open door to a lot more kinds of different kinds of corruption and control and government involvement and things.
Absolutely. Yep.
So anybody who's pushing legalization, I'm suspicious of. People who are pushing decriminalization, that's a different thing. That's if someone needs help or whatever, sending someone who uses drugs and doesn't hurt people to jail, I don't like that idea. But pushing this, this push for everything to be legalized and available on every corner, we don't know what they're putting in the weed these days. I think, there's some of these strains of weed are being grown with this nano sonar kind of thing where they're beaming sound frequencies at them to increase the potency of stuff like that. To me, that sounds like part of the 5G mind control operation, right? So we don't know what kind of strains are being developed to there's GMO weed, there's all sorts of infiltration of growing fields, people showing up saying they're there to test the purity of the organic stuff and replacing your plant with GMO crap. And so all these people who think that they're smoking good stuff are under mind control. And the same thing with the prostitution stuff, right? Will this be an avenue to pass, certain kinds of vaccines around or contagions or whatever, whatever. There's so much weird stuff that can happen that I just am very suspicious of legalization. And I bet you that, but if you're right, I don't think we're going to hear about decriminalization. I think we're going to hear about legalization.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you get the IRS involved and there's taxes and of course, to your point, whether it's vaccines or antibiotics and checkups, and now we've got the medical industry coming in.
You can go to the prostitution house, but you have to have a checkup and a vaccine first and all that kind of crap. Yep.
Right. And the women themselves have to go through a rigorous kind of protocol. And so, yeah, I think it's state-sponsored capitalism in some way. So let's just check in with the chat room really quickly.
Hi, chat room. I can't see you on my end, but
let's see what people have to say. Let me find out
what we got going on.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. We've got Chris and Steve say Kraft and his ilk think they are untouchable except at massage parlors. Ooh, good comment.
Well, and I also wonder about, even though this Kraft isn't connected to macaroni and cheese, that thought comes up in people's head, and pasta was a term used in the Pizzagate issue. The Eatzagate pay issues, right? Like it's another kind of coding. So I think that's an interesting part of this as well, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's see. What else? Rhonda says many of these girls do not have birth certificates. Good point. Can't determine their age. Let's see what else. Cato says R. Kelly didn't do anything Howard Hughes didn't do. That's true. That's absolutely true. I talked about how R. Kelly got hooked on young girls last week.
It was done to him, yeah.
It was done to him. Maury says, so the bottom line seems to be they have to now sacrifice the likes of Kraft and Kelly to keep their secrets. ?
Well, they may have been developed for this purpose, yeah.
So 10 Dragon says, just watched a video on a lady who figured out Kamala is not black. So
wouldn't surprise me.
Kamala Harris.
Her dad just disowned her too.
I'm not even sure Kamala Harris is a woman. There are times she looks very masculine.
Right.
Okay. But Kamala Harris she's Jamaican. So she's West Indian.
Mm-hmm.
She's East Indian.
Yeah.
Because her mother comes from India originally.
Mm-hmm.
And her father, who has disowned her, originates from Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. And he's not happy with the things she said regarding marijuana.
Not only that, but her father understands that she's a peddler in identity politics.
Totally. Well, yeah.
And you know, Kamala is banging the reparations drum.
Do you know who else is that I just heard this morning? Marianne Williamson is banging the reparations drum too.
Yes, another total fraud.
Yeah.
Another total fraud. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes. I agree. Mm-hmm.
So Kamala Harris is in her family history. You know, they were slave owners in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. They had a plantation in Jamaica. It was the Brown family.
The Brown family.
The Brown family. Yeah. So she can bang that drum all she wants, but at the end of the day, she'll be outed as a complete hypocrite and a fraud. But the way that most people handle it, but I think the left does a tremendous job of avoiding being caught or being outed. They just move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else we have.
Or they just make so many different conspiracies and controversies around a person that nobody can figure out which one it is, so they just forget it and say, "I will accept them." Right? Yeah. Like, was he born in Kenya, or was he a CIA agent, or is he, you know what I mean? Whatever. Was he Frank Marshall Davis's son, right? With the Obama stuff. Like, there were so many differing, was he a Malcolm X's son, right? That nobody could sort it out, and everyone's just like, whatever.
Right, exactly. There's so much confusion.
Right.
That at some point you're unable to.
That goes to the same cognitive dissonance we were just talking about with the Eddie Bravo and the Joe Rogan and the Alex Jones. Like, nobody knows what to believe, so they just accept the whole thing hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got some talk in the chat room about pedophilia and rock and roll, Rolling Stones.
Oh, yeah.
Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you go back and you listen to those songs, like Ringo Starr. One of his big hits was "She's 16, She's Beautiful, and She's Mine." Right?
Oh, right.
I mean, it was pretty out in the open. Bill Wyman, shacked up with Mandy, what's her name, 15 years old.
Yeah.
That was the time where they had the Plaster Casters and the Pamela Day Bears and all those teenage groupies. What's her name? The one who would Liv Tyler's mom.
Oh, BB Buell?
BB Buell. I mean, they were all like 14, 15 years old.
It's gross, yeah.
And they're all running around LA, basically hotel hopping, which of course is touched on a little bit in Almost Famous.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, is it Nearly Famous? Is that what it is?
It was Almost Famous. It was with Kate, what's her name? Kate Hudson. That was a good movie.
Well, it's a good movie, but they really sugarcoat, right? I mean, but
totally.
They're telling the story of what happened
in Laurel Canyon and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. They make it seem like that the girls are just there to have kind of a cool experience and not like sleep with these guys when in reality that wasn't the case at all.
No, it's the long-term program there. I mean, like I've talked about, when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, right? A girl that I did gymnastics with lived on Wonderland, like back there in Laurel Canyon on Wonderland Avenue. And I was, a good kid, a straight A student and a gymnast, but I smoked my first cigarette back there. I had my first beer back there. The whole point of that area and whatever the operation is that's ongoing there is to put young kids into these, weird situations, at a young age and where they think they're getting to do something cool, but really in a weird way, they're being, turned out.
Oh, totally. I mean, I lived that story out when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, the counterculture was something that, I fell in love with because it was.
Ooh, I see a kitty tail. I see Rosie.
She's
Hi, Rosie. Olivia's over in the corner taking a nap on her princess pillow.
So of course I got swept up into that because I thought it was cool. Right?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And that's what the programming was about.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Tyler, first wife, did a YouTube video that was interesting. Steven Tyler, man, remember when he got undressed by Joe Rogan? That was sad.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of the beginning of the descent for Rogan.
It was a little. It's been going. The beginning of the descent was the Jon Irvin interview.
Jon Irvin, I would agree with you. The Jon Irvin interview where Joe turns on him, and I mean that was almost like, you know, where they were talking about how when you were raised in Nazi Germany, you know, this is on the Rogan Alex Jones podcast. He had to kill like a puppy.
Yeah.
You know, that was almost like part of Joe's initiation, I think.
Right.
That he had to turn on,
slay a legend.
Yeah, he had to turn on Jan, and I think he had to turn on Alex. I think that was part of his initiation. And then now,
Jan wasn't a legend, but you have to kill your friend, and then another friend, and then a famous person. You know, a huge legend. You have to take. You know, and each one is like getting another notch on your belt.
Right.
Yeah. Another feather in your hat.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you call it macaroni, which brings us back to Kraft, right?
Kraft macaroni. He's a crafty guy, that Bob Kraft.
Hey.
His son looks really weird. I'm sorry, man.
I haven't seen pictures of his son.
His son looks a little creepy. Let's put it that way.
He looks creepy. That hair is second only to Trump's, you know?
Bob Kraft?
Yeah.
Well, he's letting it grow long now, though, right? You know, Bob Kraft has become an OG. He hangs with all these hip hop guys. Right. He's hanging out with Jay-Z, Cardi B, Meek Mill. You know, that's his.
How embarrassing.
I know. It's like, come on, dude. You know, have some decorum. Stop chasing the youth that you never had because you were married to your father-in-law's daughter, the father-in-law who you would basically take his business away from.
Yeah.
So come on, let's get real here. So let's just do this one more thing. I just wanted to bring you and I brought this up because I think it's really kind of an interesting insight. And we all know that this is happening. We all know this is going on right now. But this is kind of the latest example, if I can bring this. There it is. All right. Let me get into the screen share. So we all know that Hollywood is deeply, deeply, deeply invested in raising their kids as gender fluid. Well, not the first couple, because of course the first couple cannot have a mixed race baby, right? The first couple being William and Kate, but the second couple can. That's number one. They could have a mixed race baby. Number two, I believe Meghan Markle also is Jewish, if I'm not mistaken. So I think her father might be Jewish, in which case her mother, the words passed through the matrilineal line. Maybe it may not qualify, but Meghan Markle, I believe, is also Jewish. So now she's kind of the Jussie Smollett of the.
Their children are enrolled in Sweden's gender-neutral kindergarten.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So here we go. This is they're gonna raise their kids as being gender fluid. Okay, gender fluid. So it says Prince Harry, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry will reportedly raise their baby gender fluid and won't post stereotypes on it. So this is interesting. You would get to look at some of their pictures. Here Meghan Markle has this outfit on, which kind of makes her look slightly Indian, slightly Pakistani, maybe slightly Muslim without the burqa, right? Okay. All right. And he's just, okay, straight ahead. Here we go. Now, her baby shower took place in New York. And her attire for her baby shower, this is them coming out. This is her pals, whatever, coming out of her baby shower. But in her baby shower, look, she's all dressed in black. So black is the color of Saturn. Okay, so she's acknowledging Saturn with the unborn child.
Well, and she has her arms around her belly like the rings around Saturn.
Right. So this is
not that that's an unusual position for pregnant women to put their arms in, but it is interesting that you say that.
Now I know that, yes, of course, it's New York and black is this respectable and always.
But it's not usually what you wear to a baby shower.
No, not what you wear to a baby shower. So the baby is wrapped in this Saturnian sort of tent, or this Saturnian wrapper, so to speak. Okay, this is, there's the cake, storks. There she is again. I mean, look at this. She's all black. This is an homage to Saturn.
This thing going on in the upper right-hand corner, I don't understand that of your screen. I have no idea what that is either, but I'm finding
that thing. That thing. Let's find out what that is.
It's like she's popping a big pimple or something. What the heck?
What is that? Oh yeah. Ooh. Bet you guys weren't ready for that.
Yeah, I was like, suddenly I couldn't.
Oh, he goes, oh yeah, it took out that. Yeah, that's great. Ugh. Is he getting a chip put in? Who knows?
Right.
Holy shit.
So this is the thing, like, with Charlize Theron is letting her 4 or 5-year-old, I can't remember which country he's from, African son, go around saying he's a girl or whatever. And like, I just don't understand how anyone could. Sure, I think it's fine for kids to be imaginative when they're younger. And, if your kid, wants to put on nail polish, even if that's the wrong gender, if they want to, fine. But how could a kid really know at 4, what they want or whatever? And this whole, like, I mean, how are they going to raise them gender fluid? Is it never going to let anybody know that such an idea of boy or girl exists?
Well, that's the program, right? I mean, that is the program, and they're getting orders. They're not taking this up as some kind of, cool social trend. They're being told what to do.
Yeah.
This is how the script is getting played out. They're being told what to do. And because they're a quote unquote royal couple, they're embodying all these different ideas, right? They're embodying this mixed element. Mm-hmm. They're embodying, I mean, I don't know if she's got bloodline. She's probably got bloodline somewhere, or else they wouldn't let her in. But this mixed element, and here, check this out. Watch the video. So here she's getting like the Mendy tattoo, right? Is that what it's called? She's getting that, and again, it's a very, very public thing, and it's happening theoretically at Christmas.
So is the baby going to be gender fluid and also raised like Hindu or Muslim or something like that?
These are all the signals that they're sending. Okay, yeah. They're sending the signals that this is the model for the new culture. This is how we're going to be interacting.
Everybody's going to be all genders and all religions and all this and that, right? Everyone's going to be a patchwork within their own self.
So this is the rewriting and the re-editing of the script for humanity. Mm-hmm. This is
cultural genetics. This is the rewriting of the cultural DNA code.
Yes.
This is cultural CRISPR. This is gene editing of the cultural DNA.
This is what I would call the dark new age. Mm-hmm. This is the dark version of Aquarius.
Oh, and so there she has the black and the white.
Well, of course, they're running the operation, right? They're running. This is dualistic magic.
Yep.
The black and the white.
So they're going to walk the middle line, the gray line.
And look at it. He's even doing the claw. You see that?
Yeah.
The triad claw, the Masonic claw.
Yeah.
So they're signaling the entire time.
Yeah.
He's always walking ahead of her as well. You understand?
Yeah.
He's always ahead of her. He's ahead of her here. So he's still the man. Still the man. But that's what they're doing. They're re-editing, re-scripting everything. Now, if you go a few levels deeper, right? A few levels deeper with the re-editing piece. So look at genetically modified plants, right? They want to genetically modify everything. They've already genetically modified fish, right? Genetically modified plants.
Yeah.
I'm even assuming that if your pet is chipped, they might even be slightly genetically modified.
Totally.
Right. So there's this idea.
If anybody has a well-behaved cat, we know what's going on.
Yeah. So there's that version of rewriting the entire genome.
Yeah.
The planetary genome. Okay.
On an not only on an inside the body level, but on a cultural level, right? Because as within, so without. So
culture. So there's the cultural level that's taking place.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is racial mixing being really pushed right now? Right. Like if you look at, I read a stat. So I think it's like 6% of the couples in the UK are mixed race. And if you look at the adverts, it's probably about 60 to 70% of the adverts.
Right.
The reason why they're pushing the mixed racial kind of ideology and theme is because ultimately they want everybody to be one color.
Right.
You know, they want to create the golden race.
A monoculture, yeah.
That's it. That's it. It to some extent doesn't mean kind of eradicating whiteness or European culture. Sure, absolutely, because there's historical context there, right? There's these ideas that, you know, that this era existed and this era existed and these people were. Well,
that's the other thing. It's not, and people like, it isn't just white culture, right? In a lot of ways, they're eradicating all of these different cultures. Like even that when you get like, you know, Black Lives Matter or La Raza kind of stuff, they're not fighting for like the important parts of their ancient inherited culture, right? They're just screaming and yelling about stuff that's going on now. So they actually are like, you know, they want to strengthen this idea of fighting over stuff with no history, right? They don't want people to fight for their history. They want people to fight over just the thing about right now.
Right, exactly. And if you really drill down into the Black Lives Matter website, really what they are is they're an arm of LGBTQ. I mean, they're not just Black Lives Matter, but they're.
Well, it kicked off the intersectionality stuff, so yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's another part. I mean, if they were really, you know, engaged in the preservation of their history or their culture or whatever that is, you know, they'd be really looking at it. That would be part of their platform, but it's really,
it's not. It's intersectionality, right?
Yeah.
Intersectionality denies anyone's history. It just comes together over where they're like, you know, that they're all oppressed. So oppression is the new cultural currency, and history is not.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because when you get into history, you begin to take it apart. You go, well, what's really going on here? These people were oppressed, and these people were slaves, and these people were involved in this, and they're not involved in. I mean, when you pull history apart, you realize that it's one giant clusterfuck, and everybody's hands are dirty.
Yeah,
they're all dirty.
Yeah,
right? You begin to just look at it, you go, okay, well, I mean, and even to some extent, like I bang on Israel because they went in, they grabbed the land, and the Zionists, you know, had a big land grab.
Yeah,
but that's not unlike other parts of history.
No, it's just the current manifestation of the same shit.
It's a more modern model. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right. Was the land taken? Absolutely. Was it taken under suspicious circumstances? What land isn't?
Right.
You think people sit down and say, hey, we're going to take your land? Oh, sure. Come on over. No problem.
Right.
Maybe some of that happened in here in this country.
Right, like the first Thanksgiving, right, where the Indians and the Pilgrims had dinner together.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But, you know, it's like, yeah, come on in and take our women too. We don't need them either, right?
Yeah.
That shit doesn't happen. So, you know, it's not like I'm giving Israel a pass, but I'm more about, you know, looking at what they're doing now in terms of how that relationship has evolved, which has not been great, right?
Right.
But we would find, if we were really historical, that this stuff has been going on for a long time. And they're really, truly, if you flesh it all out, that there are no victims.
Mm-mm.
That we've all been victims.
Mm-hmm.
And that we've all had some hand in oppression.
Yep.
We've
all been lied to, and we've all been involved in a lie. Yep.
Absolutely. And in which case, it's like, well, who can we blame? We can't blame anybody.
Right.
Right? We can't blame. And so if we're going to blame something now, it has to be, or if we have to unveil the truth now, we have to be in this moment now and trying to really understand what's taking place.
Yeah.
And who's pulling the strings now.
Pulling the strings, and you have to take full responsibility for your own self-education and your own behavior and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, absolutely. So, and it's hard for, you know, that's part of the reason people don't like this, you know, like this kind of thing that you and I are involved in, right? Because if these things turn out to be true, then the only solution to that is for people to take responsibility for things themselves. And people don't like to do that. It's hard to do.
It's very hard. It's very, very hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, to take responsibility for oneself, you've really got to, you got to break some shit down. You've got to understand why you don't do it.
Yep.
And I just keep coming back to the one sort of fulcrum or turning point for most people is why we undermine ourselves, why we consistently undermine ourselves.
Yeah.
In the choices we make, the people that we associate with, the relationships that we have, the lifestyles that we take on, the habituation that we seem to turn a blind eye to. And even when we think we're on top of our game and we're really like, you know, as clear as we can be, there's that subtle moment where you go, oh, fuck, I just sold myself out. Why did I do that?
Yep.
You know, how did I do that? How did that occur? And I think ultimately that's the biggest piece that we really need to untangle. And it takes a lot of focus and clarity. And I think once you can get to that point and represent oneself accordingly, then all of our relationships change. You know, all of our networks change. All of our relationships with what we do change. And that's the last thing that these people that are pulling the strings and creating all this confusion want us to understand and figure out.
Yep, I agree.
Mm-hmm. And for me, ultimately, when you get to that place, you know, and I don't have any problem. To me, that's where you get to God inside of you.
Absolutely. And that's where the truth is inside of you. God is inside of you. All of the answers are only inside of you. There's information out here. The truth is only inside.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then when you get to that place, things open up. And now you've got this very fluid relationship with, when I say fluid, I mean fluid in the sense that it's flowing, right?
Not gender fluid.
Not gender fluid. No, we're deific fluid, right?
Right.
So then you're living in real time, and you're having real time encounters and real time emotions, you know, and that's where the navigation becomes real interesting. And I don't think any belief system has a patent on that. I'm sorry.
I agree.
And I had E. Michael Jones on the show last week, and that show really pushed a lot of people's buttons.
I haven't gotten a chance to go back and watch that one.
Oh, it's a hot button show. First of all, I want to apologize for chewing gum. I rarely chew gum, but I was chewing gum, and the reason why is because I had Michael on audio. And so in my head, I was thinking, well, you know, I'm on audio on some level, right? And that wasn't the case. And I was like chewing gum like a freaking, you know, machine gun. Yeah. Got a lot of negative comments about it. But you know, but one of the things,
you're here to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and you were done kicking ass, so you just chewed bubble gum.
Yeah, I had the bubble gum, right? Yes, good one. So the thing with Michael, which was fascinating, is that there were people on my side that couldn't deal with Michael. You know, because Michael's a Catholic, and you know, Michael's got really hardcore ideas about sexuality and homosexuality. And he talked about the mayor of Indianapolis and how he's manipulated because he's a homosexual, and he's manipulated through his narcissism. And I'm like, well, you know, narcissism is generally a quality that a lot of people have when they go into political office.
Yep, there's nobody who's a high level politician isn't a narcissist on some level.
On some level, right?
And that's the thing that makes them easy to manipulate. It's not because they're a racist or because they're this or that or whatever. That's all the BS cover story. It's because they're narcissistic, and they'll do whatever they need to do to maintain whatever their image of themselves they like best, or whatever's going to make them look good or more popular or whatever.
That's right.
If tomorrow it would behoove Trump to, you know, become a champion of all immigrants, then that's what he would do.
Yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's not a racist. He's a narcissist. It's worse. The racists at least believe in something, right?
So, yes. Yeah. Well, so there are people on this side who tuned out Michael. Now, why did I have Michael on the show? Because Michael talks about logos. And like, I can relate to that, right? I can relate to this concept of logos. And he as a Catholic, he talks about consciousness. I don't know too many people, Catholics, that talk about consciousness. We were talking about this mechanism of logos rising and bringing things up to the surface. And I thought, well, these are interesting ideas. And some of Michael's ideas around urban renewal, basically white urban renewal as kind of this, as a form of race war. I thought that was real. He's got great ideas. And that's why I have him on the show.
Yeah. I also like to me these days, it is, I mean, I love doing these shows with you. You know, I see the eye on a lot of things, not always on everything, but I like having conversations with people who I disagree with on a lot of stuff as well, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever happened to being able to have an interesting conversation with someone you disagree with? That's actually where interesting stuff comes out of. So right. Yeah, I there's there's this guy who's a religious guy that I've always wanted to interview. I don't think he does interviews. His name is Jonathan Kleck. You know who he is?
No.
Jonathan Kleck, he's, you know, a born again Christian, but he's the guy who really found all of the symbology in the different currencies, right? And he's an artist and he has a lot of interesting ideas about things and whatnot. And he thinks everything's because, you know, the end of the world is coming, Jesus is coming back and all that kind of stuff, right? So I don't have to agree with him on why he thinks these things are happening, but he's very accurate in a lot of his analysis of what is happening, right?
Right.
And I'd say the same with E. Michael Jones, right? Like from what it sounds like from you, like his analysis of what is going on, right, is interesting. Now, whether you guys agree or the audience agrees as to why it's happening or what it means or whatever on a different level is really, you know, not important. Same thing when I listen to somebody like a Ben Shapiro or a Larry Elder or whatever, right? Their analysis of what is happening is good. I disagree with them as to what the solution to it is, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, why not be able to discuss things with people who you have disagreements with or different points of view from? I think those are the most fascinating conversations. Agreeing about everything is boring.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You were supposed to say, no, Emily, you're wrong.
No. I caught the irony there. But on the other side of the Michael script, you know, he took my interview with him and he put it on his channel. I think he's probably close to about 10,000 views on that thing now.
And they probably loved it.
Well, they liked the interview. They didn't like the fact that I chewed gum, which right. I totally get.
Yeah.
You can, you know, you're not seeing him, you know, why do you have to look at me? Just dim your computer screen. Just listen to the interview. Right. And then this other woman, not the other woman, but this woman who's in Michael's world said, oh, I almost subscribed to his channel, but I found out he was an astrologist.
Right.
That's the other thing, you know. Yep. So it's an interesting.
Kudos to Michael to doing the interview with you, even though you're an astrologer and even though you have a totally different viewpoint on a lot of stuff. That's, you know, a lot of religious people aren't willing to do that. So kudos to him.
Well, that's true, and I'm happy for that. But I think to some extent, I think Michael sees, and I don't want to you know, put words in his mouth, but I think he sees. Like he spent a week with David Duke down in Central America. Oh, wow. At some conference. And he believes, so David Duke is a progenitor of ethnos, right? He's an identitarian. Yes. And Michael spent a week trying to convert him to Jesus Christ so he can take in logos, which is a higher level of ethnos. Mm-hmm. You know, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. So he's willing to hang out with people that are not, you know, in his club. Yeah. And I think it's great. And I think so too. And I think to the degree that, you know, there might be a religious element in there. It's like, well, hey, maybe I could convert this guy. Yeah. Which I think is kind of part of it as well, that the ideas, you know, might sink in and, hey, we've got another one and now, you know, this thing works. Yeah. So I think there's some of that involved too, but you should listen to the interview. It's pretty intense, and there may be some stuff in there that you will agree with. And others say, that's a little harsh. And I'll get even more excited about the things I disagree with. Yeah. So hey, this has been a good little jam here, Emily. Yeah, might want to end the screen share so we can say goodbye to the folks on the screen. We've been on screen share for a while. Yeah, thanks for that. My bad. Yeah, no. This was awesome. So this was our first foray into the live Matrix Mash. And this has been a great conversation. And look who's joined us here at the end. Yeah, as we wrap it up, hey guys, you can catch me over on Off Planet Radio. It's on our YouTube channel, it's Off Planet Media, offplanetradio.com. And also on I do this with Robert. So I do Off Planet Radio with Randy. I do this with Robert. And then I do Words with Danny with my friend Danny Katz. And we have some interesting stuff coming up on that. And yeah, hit Robert up for an astrological reading. Right. You know, forecasts and transition reports and all of his everything reading. And you can hit me up at Facebook at Emily Moyer for a nutritional consultation. And that's it. We'll see you next time. Anything else, Robert? No, I think you covered it. I think you covered all the bases. So this has been great. And cool. Yeah, so we'll be back again.
And Jasper has made his appearance finally at the end.
Jasper had to get in on it. So the reason why we did this live is, well, number one, we could and had the space. And thank you to Chris and Steve, because this is normally their day. So they're going to be with us.
Oh, thank you, Chris and Steve. I did not know.
Yeah, so they're going to be with us next week, and with me next week. And then, so normally Emily and I will do this and we'll upload this. But because YouTube has blocked me from uploading for 2 months, we facilitated this live exchange. And I'm happy. I was happy to do this.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it like this more often.
Yeah, it'd be a good thing. Yeah.
All right, guys.
Have a great day, Emily.
See you later. You too. Take care. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Robert. I got a jam, but that was awesome.
Totally awesome.
All right, cool.